Hello and welcome back to the Battle Room. I know it's been a while, guys, but today I wanted to break down the teams that did well at the EUIC, the first big internet of the year. Now, this tournament was super exciting. I had a fun time watching it, and if you want to see my reaction to the finals, I'll be posting that tomorrow. But today we're here for the teams. What is the spice that these players traveling from around the world have brought to this tournament? We're going to go through all 32 teams, just kind of talking over them briefly. But yeah, let's start at number 32 with Lunaladon. So Lunaladon is a team that I think isn't super surprising to be doing well. It was tearing up high ladder. It's just been kind of a strong force lately as time has gone on. Lunala is actually a pretty good Pokemon, and I do think that Groudon plus Lunala is one of the stronger restricted duos that doesn't involve Zation, because I think Zation is obviously one of the best Pokemon in the game, if not the best. And it usually doesn't, obviously it can't involve Zation, but it still is finding a lot of success. Lunala usually running the power of Meteor Beam, and then just pairing that with Groudon and usually Venusaur as well. Lunaladon is going to be something we're going to see a lot, but I think those are the general strengths of it. Lunala is really good. It's like extremely hard to one-shot, and then this team overall is pretty good versus Rinyasan, and it's also good versus Zation itself. Like, especially like this one, for example, we've got Groudon, Incin, Gastron, and Venusaur all doing great things against Zation. So, yeah, that's like the main thing about Lunaladon. This isn't a super surprising team to see here doing well, but it is very, very good. I will leave all my Rinyasan thoughts for the end, just so you guys know. But yeah, so Rinyasan, very, very good, potent team, and we're seeing it here. Next up, we have Weezing Regigigas. So Weezing Regigigas, I would say, I don't want to say it's a meme, but it felt kind of memey at first. But seeing Chef pilot it and seeing it being used so well in the tournament, specifically against stuff like Rinyasan, it actually is just like a pretty solid idea. Weezing is very, very good. Most of the restrictors rely on their abilities, and having Weezing and Regigigas being able to turn those on and off at a whim is huge, especially with Kyogre and Calyrex, two great partners for it, and then Barraskewda to add more speed control. I think Ben's team is super cool, and it would be a nightmare to face. Next up is a pretty simple Calyrex plus Zation team. I think Calyrex Zation is another strong duo that is kind of rising like Lunaladon was. I don't think this archetype really had much foundation. It was doing okay at the events. You saw it here and there, but it wasn't like really popping off like it is now. And I think it's a very, very potent duo, and I think it's one that's going to stick around. I think Calyrex has finally found its footing in the meta, and I think it's here to stay now. Whereas before it felt like people weren't really respecting Calyrex, and it felt like it was super duper underused. Next up is Solgaleo plus Groudon, which is a rather interesting team, honestly. I think this team was really cool. We got to see it on stream. It was built around Brutal Swing, Sash, like max speed Thundurus. That was supportive too. It had like Eerie Impulse and Thunder Wave, but it was also max speed and max special attack, so it could max against Rinyasan. It was a really cool team. It also involved Suicune. Venusaur is another Pokemon that is very much rising. So I thought this team was really cool when I saw it on stream, and it was a great pick. Obviously, the one we saw on stream was Pato, who was up a little bit higher, but also Yuri did pilot that to great success, honestly. Making day 2 is no joke. Next up is Nils. Again, with this Calyrex plus Shadow Rider team. I think a lot of times you'll see this kind of combo where it's like the 3 starters of Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Blastoise, because the Firewater Grass Core paired with those 2 legends is just so deadly. And then you just add Alecki. Alecki's just a really, really strong mon. Another mon that I think was really rising in this tournament, especially with max Alecki game plans or centering around maxing their Alecki, was a huge part of a lot of the players' game plans. And it makes sense that we're seeing Alecki here. And then Blastoise is another max. I think it's a really well thought out team and just a really strong concept overall. Next up, we see Shadow Rider Kyogre, which I think Shadow Rider Kyogre is really, really really rare. We saw one already with Chef, but like it's one of those combos that I just very rarely see. It's super, super aggressive. I think almost always it's just like very hyper offensive. You got to get those reads. You got to be keeping that momentum on your side of the field. Otherwise, it's just going to fall apart. And that is the case here. I think Roberto's team is pretty wild. And you can see the offensive, right? The Alecki, the Indeedee, and Whimsicott to support this hyper offensive core. Once again, is the Solgaleo team. Again, not too surprising there. And then next up is Kyurem White Groudon with Sableye as well. This was another team that was featured on stream, but I think it is kind of a neat. Sableye does add a really neat layer to it with Ally Switch, with Quash, with Trick. It can be very, very potent, and the Sun mode is something that I think does set aside this Kyurem team than normal teams, just because, you know, Traditionally, you see Cure paired with Zation, but with this Sun mode, it adds a really two potent maxes, and it can be probably really throw off your game. And then Ditto's Ditto. It's a fun, cool mon to throw and involve in the mix. Next up is Fox with a Yveltal plus Zation team. I think Yveltal Zation is definitely up there in terms of high quality restricted pairs, but it's one that I think is still underexplored. I think there's a lot you can do with it. I do think it's really potent. And it's no surprise to see Fox doing as well as they did with it. This definitely feels like an older type of build. Like 2 ground types, 2 electric types is pretty wild. But sometimes in this format, it's not about typing, and it's about how you approach the matchups and what you're doing with that. Next up is Yuyatada with a Calyrex Palkia team. Now, Calyrex Palkia really hasn't fallen off, but it really has yet to pick up a ton of steam. I feel like it is super good, but we really haven't seen it do well at any of the Western regionals, or I guess this internet as well. I mean, this is pretty well, right? But it's not winning the tournaments yet, and I'm not sure what it's missing. I think we just need that insane Calyrex Palkia player to come out and show us how it's done. Obviously, it's a great finish, but it just feels like it's just missing that little bit of oomph to put it over the top. Next up is Aaron Trailer, one of my favorite players right now, piloting a team that was similar, the exact same as Wolf, similar to Marcus's team that got top 8. But it is a Calyrex Zation team. Again, we're mentioning that. But instead of opting for the Blastoise, the Whimsicott for extra speed control, and the double Fake Outers, I think it just makes a lot of sense. You get your restricted duo, the double Fake Outers, speed control, a max, and it just seems really oppressive to deal with. They're moving first, they're hitting fast, and they're just really obnoxious. You have to really absorb it with your defensive capabilities, otherwise it is really difficult to deal with. I was a big fan of their take on it. I thought it was pretty smart. A lot of the choices, such as Burning Jealousy Incineroar and Woodhammer Rillaboom, I thought were really intelligent, really cool. Next up is Lunalization. Now, I've never seen this restricted duo before, but this team just looks crazy. It looks super aggressive with their Shifu, and I can only assume Offensive Thunderous, but if it's not Offensive Thunderous, then it cuts a little back on the defensive end, but oh my gosh, it looks like Lunala would be the max almost every single time. Maybe it has to be Offensive Thunderous then. Overall, pretty crazy team from Jack here. Yeah, it's just a restricted duo that I'm not used to, but it definitely seems really aggressive. I know Jack did play on stream and maxed out Lunala and would weaken drops for the Bandit or Shifu, so it's an interesting strategy and one we really have very rarely see. Next up is Pardini with a Zation Kyogre team with Venusaur. I think Venusaur plus Zation Kyogre is really strong. We're going to see it a little bit later. Spoiler alert. But I think it's really strong right now. It adds a really strong like trio of Pokemon, and it gives you a great Sun matchup. And so I think those 3 paired together is really good. And I think Pardini, obviously piloted this team well. He's got that speed control. He's got that support. And he's got that G-Max Wildfire. So it looks like it's just a really good answer to Sun teams. And then you just rely on your Venusaur to take you through the Rain teams too. It kind of functions both ways, and I think that is pretty cool about the little combo. Next up here is Zation Yveltal again. This time opting for the double Fake Outers, Whimsicott and Thunder. So like it feels like a much more aggressive version because we have the Tailwind. It instantly turns on the heat a little bit just because they are coming at you faster than normal. But it does look like a really potent team as well. I don't know very little about this, but like it does look like a pretty aggressive take on that variant, which I do find is generally pretty bulky, like with the Fox version down here. This is very defensive in nature, whereas this one feels more aggressive. Next up is the Zation Kyogre plus Shedinja. Zation Kyogre Shedinja is not something too crazy. I think Hari did extremely well with it at the first regional in Europe and was able to place second place actually. And I feel like it just kind of cemented it as a real core, whereas before like Shedinja was like, it seemed cool, it seemed kind of good, but was it like tournament winning worthy? And Hari proved that it was. So I feel like there are a couple of Shedinjas following in the footsteps of Hari just as such a good and concrete core. Shedinja is able to press Ally Switch, Endure to live any max move, and it does not break the sash. Poltegeist just doing big damage, and Shadow Sneak for priority. It matches up incredibly well versus like stuff like Shadow Rider, and overall Shedinja is just a very real and cool Pokemon that you do have to take respect to. Next up is a Kyogre team as well, with Kartana, Zapdos, Whimsicott, and Amoonguss. A very offensive team, I think, in nature, but it also has this defensive backbone. This team was used as well at Frankfurt by Terran here to find insane success. So I think it's just going back to their roots, playing what's good. I mentioned this earlier, I believe, where it's like you have this defensive core of these 3 Pokemon, these 4, but then you can just turn on the gas and bring Whimsicott and just be super aggressive. So I think it is a cool concept that it's able to just flip on a dime depending which support you bring, and I think that is really cool. Next up is Thunderous Tea. Good lord, it's again the same concept of Zation Calyrex with the 3 starters, but instead of Alecki, it's Thunderous Tea to give yourself an insane Alecki matchup. I assume it's Fly and like mixed. It's honestly kind of sick. I kind of like the Thunderous Tea. I think it is cool. Thunderous Tea to me has always been kind of a sleeper mon. I always feel like it's so good. On paper, I always think it's so strong, but it just doesn't have that big hurricane or anything, and like it always just kind of feels meh. But I'm glad to see it popping off at 15th here. That's pretty nuts. Next up here is Zation Groudon, but a little bit different. It's not Rinya's son. There's an Umbreon and there's a Venusaur. It feels much more like Series 8 son, which I do like because I think Venusaur is really good right now. No Charizard, Umbreon to help with the Shadow Riders, and then Thundurus just be supportive. I think it's a cool team. Next up is Chalky. Chalky here. With a pretty, I would argue, standard team of... this team's been around for a while. It's the Grimmsnarl Kyogre with AV Kyogre. A really, really sick team. Congrats to Chalky on the run. It's very simple in what it does. You set up the screens for the Kyogre. It was like the first rendition of screens. And then Zapdos Kyogre Sweep. It's very simple, but very effective at what it does. And there's Hari, who brought the same team that he used to get second at the regionals. Bringing it back once again for another run. Again, I mentioned it earlier with Shedinja. It's just like Shedinja is such a serious and real mon that you're able to play this team in such a cool way. I think for best of threes, it really strengthens Shedinja too because it could always be lurking there. It can always be waiting in the back. So I'm a huge fan of the Shedinja, like in a best of 3. Like on paper, it seems awesome. And obviously, it's performing well. It's good. So Hari performing with 12, tying for 8th place. Had resistance went their way. They could have saw themselves in cut. But again, great performance from Hari. Next up is that Calyrex plus Palkia plus Porygon team. So I think it's getting so close. It's so close to winning these events, but unfortunately it falls a little bit short here. This is the very standard version. Obviously sets are changing and moving around so much with this type of team, but yeah, I thought this team was pretty good. Really cool team, and I think it's really just up to the pilot, and I think they piloted amazingly well here. And then we've got ourselves Calyrex plus Groudon, which is a very interesting combo. Again, not a Zation combo, but kind of similar to Lunaladon, where it kind of tries to give you a really good matchup versus the opposing Sun teams. This one does include Charizard, Venusaur, and it's in order just a very aggressive team. Fast Pokemon throughout, and then Instant and Venu to back it up. I mean, this is fast too. Literally all the Pokemon but Groudon and Instant are fast, and Groudon's making everything fast and strong, so it's a very aggressive team. And next up is Wolfglick. If you don't know who Wolf is, you know who Wolf is. Wolf performing extremely well here. 9th. Just literally a win away or resistance, a little bit of resistance. Had one of the other opponents went a different match, Wolf could have saw himself in top cut. But again, this is the same team as Trailer. A very, very good team. Here, I'll actually show you the top 8 team as well. Marcus and Wolf obviously built together. Great friends. And so did Trailer. But they have a very similar team. And it actually was really interesting because on stream, you actually could catch all the techs. And so, the Incineroars were almost identical, and so were the Rillabooms, and the Zations and the Alekkis. The only difference is Marcus decided to run Yveltal, and Wolf decided to run Calyrex, and that meant the support changed to Grimmsnarl, and the support changed to Whimsicott. So they have this is Burning Jealousy Instant, this is Woodhammer Protect Rillaboom. They're the same sets, and Life Orb Rising Voltage Alecki. It's the same sets. It's just Marcus said, I don't want to use Shadow Rider. I like Yveltal, and it I can't even say he did better because they have the same record. It was just resistance that set them apart. But yeah, it felt the idea was so strong because we see these two here, and then we also see Aaron Trailer down here as in 21st out of 300 people. That's still insanely impressive, and it just felt like their ideas were just super strong for the support Pokemon, and their restricteds were just kind of it felt slotted in almost. But yeah, I was really impressed with both Marcus and Wolves. I really like their team. I think some of their little techs were really smart, as I mentioned before. And I just thought, yeah, it was a great performance from both players. Unfortunately, that Wolf couldn't make it in top 8. It would be obviously amazing to see him. But unfortunately, it was Marcus's turn to shine, and Marcus unfortunately lost. But yeah, I still think it was a great run from both these players. It's one of those things that, where you're damn, I wish he would have won. Oh man, he's so bad. he got an 8th out of 300 people at one of the hardest tournaments of the year in 2 days of Swiss. It's still damn impressive, and it is unfortunate that he wasn't able to win. Neither of them were, but still a great freaking run. Next up here is Gilgamesh's team. This team is actually bonkers. Going into this tournament, I would have never predicted these two to even be brought together. Like, if you went back in time and told me this, I would have been like, you're a liar. There's no way, dude. This is a lie. They're trolling. You're trolling me. But Alex's team is surprisingly sick. It was really focused around a Trick Room centric setup with Mimikyu and Calyrex, but also Reshiram being able to function in and out. It kind of functions like Palkia, but it doesn't have Trick Room, and it also matches up way better against Zation, which I think is super important. And then Incineroar was eject button, and it was just kind of a sick team. I think Mimikyu is always a great and amazing Pokemon, and it felt really sleeper, and it popped off here. Alex had an amazing run. It was a pleasure to watch him versus Marcus in Swiss. It was a really sick set. I recommend checking it out. And then next up is Javier here with Dialga and Zation with Weezing. Now, I think Dialga's best partner is Zation. I've said this before on stream. I think it's very, very good together. It's just super aggressive, and they share similar weaknesses, but when you're maxed, what are you really weak to? And they're just tearing big holes into your team. And I thought this team was really cool because the Weezing actually is like the answer to Rinya's Sun, but a lot of people think Weezing plus Kyogre was the answer. But Javier here said no, it's Weezing Blastoise. And so I thought it was really cool. We got to actually watch Javier play Eric. Unfortunately, Javier actually lost, but the idea is still pretty sound and cool of Weezing plus Blastoise to help beat Sun. But yeah, I think Weezing is also a really cool addition, just shutting off like really important abilities such as Intrepid Sword, Drizzle, Drought is just really, really important. And so I think Weezing is a sick mon here and a really great addition to the team. And it's just kind of a cool team. Javier was actually the 9-0 in Swiss. So Javier kind of went crazy the first day and was able to really secure himself deep into the cut, unfortunately losing. Next up is Casti. Again, Lunaladon. As I mentioned earlier, I think I like Casti's version a lot more. I think it is really well thought out here. Fini's pretty cool, especially as the team is a little bit weak to Amoonguss, but Fini can just shore that up. It can change terrains if it needs to against stuff like Rillaboom, who could give low HP Lunala problems or Groudon problems. And then Offensive Thunderous is really nasty, really scary stuff. And then Incin and Venusaur are just great supports. I think this is a really good team, and I think Lunaladon is here to stay. And this was a great run. 5th place is no joke. Absolutely insane. Amazing gameplay and chair punching skills from Casti. Next up is Joe UX9. No surprise to see Joe here. One of the best Americans, like, easily right now is Joe. Joe put the time in. He put the work in, and his success is paying off. First, he gets top 4 at Salt Lake City. Then he gets top 4 here. Obviously, this one's a little bit harder to get top 4 at. It's a bigger tournament. It's in Europe. But, on 2 hours of sleep, Joe does it again. I talk about Joe a lot. Joe's a friend of the channel and a friend of mine, and I do really respect Joe, and I think Joe's an interesting player. I'm going to be honest, though, I didn't really like the team. It looks insanely weak to Ice Rider, and it kind of feels like Joe just went with comfort here. Whereas all the other teams seem really smart and really good meta calls, Joe seems like a comfort call. Not saying it isn't a great meta call, because I think Yveltal is really nasty, and Joe had some really good calls of Venusaur. Life Orb Yveltal is really cool. Magnet Aleki was a big part of his game plan. Solgaleo Groudon. I think it's a fantastic team, and Joe did do well. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I'm not sure if this one will stick around, but I do think it's still an impressive run from Joe, and I'm curious to see when he posts his team report to learn more about how he built this team, to see if it was comfort or just like where he thought the meta was going. Because like there are a lot of Pokemon that Yveltal does match up well against. Like right below it is Lunala. Dialga hates Yveltal. Yveltal can deal with this if Trick Room's not up. So, like, I don't think Yveltal's a bad call, but I'm curious to see his thought processing behind this team. Because, to me, I'm not a huge fan, to be honest. I'll be honest with you. Next up is Victor's team. This team is cool. I loved watching this one play. I tried it out on ladder. I'm awful with it, but I think it is a really cool, fun team. Double weather. Zation Kyogre, obviously, is a great partnership, but, Tornadus is another good one. Those are, like, 3 Pokemon that we see a lot. Incin, right? Those are, like, 4 Pokemon, right? But then Venusaur Torkoal is crazy, and it kind of like changes it. It's very reminiscent of the Players Cup Champions team from Players Cup 2, where basically the same Pokemon won, but there was a Grimmsnarl over Zation, because Zation wasn't allowed. So it was a little bit of a different time, a different meta, but now Zation comes in and is able to tear it up. I think the double weather team is really cool. The way it's piloted versus Rain is awesome because it's just all about killing Kyogre, and then Torkoal can come in and beat the Rain friends. So I thought it was a cool take on the meta, and it was a cool team. I think the teams really caught me off guard because I thought they were going to be like, oh, it's going to be boring, like a bunch of stolen teams, boring stuff. But everything was really surprisingly creative and really good meta calls and really good... just potent, good teams, original stuff. I thought it was a sick tournament. I was pleasantly surprised. But Victor's team was one of my favorites. I thought it was just awesome watching Torviv play. He's a great and amazing player, and it was just kind of nasty. It was kind of nasty watching him play versus Joe, versus O. But yeah, it was fun to watch this team play. The duality of the weather is really fun, and I think Venusaur, Kyogre, and Zation is just a great combo. And now, our finalists. First up is O. O's team is pretty neat. I would say that Zation Kyogre teams are really, really good. And going into this tournament, I thought they were a really good call. And I think O's team is what you need out of it. Because I think going into this tournament, bringing the same old isn't going to work for you. But O spiced it up a little bit, changing stuff up, adding Landorus, making sure Torn's there. Even running Rillaboom. I think a lot of the choices really intelligent and smart. It's also Life Orb Kyogre, which I think finally got to see its time to shine. I think Life Orb Kyogre's been great for a while, but no one has really like put up the numbers with it. No one's won the tournament with it. And he didn't win, but he sure damn well did well. So I think that it finally showed the strength of Life Orb Kyogre, and it was cool to see here just because like Max Kyogre does insane damage with those Life Orb Max Geysers in the rain. And so I think it was definitely a well-deserved, second place finalist from O. Definitely, almost won. But again, I think this team is really cool, and it's spiced up the Kyogre-Zation archetype just enough that I think it was able to put itself over the top and get second at the tournament. And the winner was Rinya's Sun. So, Rinya's Sun, right? This is the team everyone thought would win. Everyone expected to win, right? They're like, oh, it's won 2 regionals. It's won 3 regionals. It's, placing so well here and there and there. But I think this tournament was really against it. And I think this is less about Rinya's Sun winning and more about Eric Rios winning. Eric won the most recent Liverpool tournament. And, with flying colors, he dominated with the same team. But going into this tournament, I felt this team was much weaker. But Eric really, really proved how good he is a player. Watching those sets was insane. Eric's an incredible player. He's a World's top 8 player. He's gotten like 3rd at Worlds when he was in seniors. Eric's been around for a while, and Eric took a huge break during COVID and came back just all cylinders firing, and Eric popped off, honestly. And so I think Rinya's Sun is still a team to counter and be prepared for. But I do think that it's not as strong as it once was, and it really is just an ode to how good Eric is as a player. I think obviously the team makes a lot of sense. I've talked about it. I have a whole video on it on the channel. But, it's about Groudon and Zation powering up Charizard with this great core. And then you have Grimmsnarl setting up screams for them if need be. Incin providing Intimidate, and Gastron bringing everything together and just solidifying your Kyogre matchup. And I think the team itself is just amazing. But Eric really pushes the level. I don't think it's like the greatest team of all time. I think it's going to be one for the history books. I think we're going to be talking about Rinya's Sun 5 years from now. But I also think this tournament is about Eric and less about that team. And congratulations to Eric. I think a really well-deserved win for Eric. I think he's an insane player, and just watching his games, like, he's just so hype. He made intelligent decisions. The big change was Iron Ball Grimmsnarl over screens. He still had screens, but like light clay, and he would just trick Iron Ball. It was just totally different tech. It almost comes full circle because that's how the original Rinya team was, and then they moved to screens, and then Eric moved to Iron Ball. And now we're back at square one. But yeah, overall, I think the other techs were very similar. It wasn't too creative, and nothing else really changed on the team for Eric. And it was just a really well-deserved victory for him as a player. And I think Rinya's Sun has continued to dominate, and I think having answers to it, being prepared for it is super important. But I don't think it's like the end-all, be-all team of the format. There's clearly other stuff winning because, there was, I think, only 2 that I talked about. Eric winning, but then someone else. So there wasn't a lot of them being run throughout the tournament. And I think it is more of an ode to Eric. Congratulations again to Eric. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see me analyze Eric's finals versus O, it'll be live tomorrow. Have a great and amazing day. I'll see you guys next time.